All right, here we go.
Hello.
We are live. Hello.
I feel like I was here yesterday.
Close.
I know, right?
Yes. Well, we have a lot to talk about. So it's
Yes. So we get started with the bad deals, the bad deal
the bad deals. That's
memories.
what we're going to talk about today. And I think both of us had a couple of different ones to choose from. Am I right?
Yeah. I think it just kind of went. There were some other ones that are a little juicier, I felt like, and we should probably use them for other kinds of lessons. So, or experiences. So I'm gonna use this little story. It was not a good deal. So
Fair enough. All right. Well, I have a feeling that because both of us have some interesting bad deals that we might go a little bit over time today, but that's okay.
yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I we'll see how it goes. I know mine is not that long. It's just the story itself.
Cool. All right. I'm going to have you go first.
Okay, so bad deal of 2017. So I was a year into it or so. It was a gentleman that had a property out in North Phoenix, like the Sunny Slope area, and unfortunately, the Sunny Slope area has some really questionable areas. This particular fourplex was right next to a drug house. And that's basically the way we found it. It was vacant, or it had other tenants there. And when we found the owner, he was very much behind on his mortgage, and he was very much. That's basically. Oh, sorry. Did you say something?
No, I did not. I was opening up the comment section on our Facebook page. And my volume was up. My bad.
Oh, no, you're good. I was like, did I miss a question? So anywho, so we found it. We found that he was behind on his loan, and then we found also that he had not a ton, but a few of the City of Phoenix liens, which is a whole other kind, I think, subject that we could totally talk about too.
Totally.
Um, when I went to see him, and I should have known that this was a red flag from the beginning, and I think as we get through more of these, we start to see more when we need to be on our, like, really on alert.
Yes.
Be aware. I remember going in and knocking on his door, his home, and it was always an excuse of some sort, like, he's not here, although I knew he was there, when you know that the person is in the living room and they're just not, they don't want to come to the door. So at one point, I remember I went, and it was a Sunday, and the wife answered, and she just kind of did one of these like shruggies, like, because I think she knew, like, this was not going to stop coming.
Right.
And then his son came out, and he started to talk to me, and he's like, well, let's just call him. We'll call everybody Jose. So Jose comes to the door, and he's like, I'm Jose Jr., can I help you? And I let him know, that I was looking for Jose Sr. And I needed to talk to him about his property up in Sunny Slope. And I was really interested in the property. I know it needed, a lot of TLC, but was willing to talk to him. And they're like, no, we're not interested, blah, blah. And then I could tell he was standing like right next to the doorway. Like, the guy was standing in front, like talking to me. But right here, you sense there's somebody behind the wall.
Yeah.
So finally, I literally like looked towards the wall, and I'm like, Jose, can you just come out and like talk to me? and he comes, and he was loaded. So at that point, I thought, oh, maybe this is not a good time for me to converse with this man. But he's like, I'm here, what do you want? The whole kind of messy drunk thing. I sort of talked to him. He was willing to show me the property during the week, went to see the property, definitely was tons of squatters, the people from the drug house next door used to use it to kind of do drugs and kind of hang out and stay and spend the night and all that sort of thing. There was actually a person, somebody who was from the drug. I never really understood that relationship. Jose had like a lookout person.
Okay.
He thought it was his lookout person. I'm like, the dude is doing drugs himself. I'm like, he's coming over here and like using your space. I think he's renting out your spots. Like, I think the man is legitimately making money off of your property. So like days progress and trying to get information out of him, like, you know, things that title needs, because we did open escrow. And as we're starting to find out, like all these little like red flags are coming up, like, you know, the deeds are a little funky, the lending is a little funky. We're like, how is this?
I
Something.
remember this deal.
Yes, everything was a little weird. And then there was like this looming thing over it that we could not just pinpoint it. We knew there was a lien on him, but we didn't know what. So I think it was like 2 weeks went by, and he was always such a pain in the ass to get a hold of. It was like constant like luring him into like, you know, asking him to come with me. There were times where I had to like pick him up from his home because his truck was not working, or his son was using his truck, or, you know, there was always some sort of an excuse. And then I got really weirded out at one point because he totally made passes at me when we were in the car.
I didn't know that part.
This little old man, and I'm like, sir, like, no, like, you don't, no, like, what are you doing? And I told him, I was like, this is the last time that we drive alone together anywhere. I'm like, I have a lot of respect for your wife, and you should have a lot of respect for me and my husband. And he chilled out, but I was like, what is wrong with you? So come now, we're trying to sell this place because we're finding out, like, I don't think anybody wants to buy a property that's next to a drug house unless we want to buy the drug house next door. And then there's like hardly any equity in it because we find out this looming case or whatever it is that's attached to the property and him and his home is a case where he ran over a girl, a young woman, and left the scene.
Drunk, right?
Drunk.
I believe, yes.
And then he tried to hide the car. So then they found the car, and then they found, you know, they found him, and he had gone to prison, but I guess because of behavior or something, I don't know, he was let go, and the family was compensated. I mean, this was a whole thing, the attorney, you know, a lot of attorneys, all of this. But I understand, I mean, this young woman was literally like, he ran her over, like she was walking. It wasn't like a car-to-car accident kind of thing. So when she wasn't able to walk for a year, maybe longer, so the family sued. But not only did they sue, so they got a chunk of money from him when he went to jail because he sold one of his properties. Every time we find out that the way that the case was built was that every property that he will sell, the money goes to them. Like he cannot profit from anything that he owns forever because he owes, I mean, it was close to like $1 million. It was kind of, you know, so I remember thinking and sitting there because I remember at this point we've had so many conversations with the family, and I asked them, I said, did you at any point in time think that maybe you should tell us? Right? Because then there's really like, what do we do here? Like we're not going to make any money. We're not, you know, at this point we're in so deep, and this is a lesson I think to all of us is I think when we're so ingrained into the whole thing that now we're just like, let's just see how we can like see this through. Right. It's better to just, you know, just walk away. It's not, you know, at this point you're just wasting time and resources, and it's not really, and that's my opinion on the deal, of course, because there was other folks that were involved. But I felt like this is just a waste of time for us, and for him, I really don't know. I mean, he's not going to get anything out of it. And if anything, I think it's bringing more to light him and what he's doing and still trying to do without paying that family.
Yeah.
Or setting some sort of a plan. Because at this point, I'm thinking, like, do your attorneys know that this is what you're doing, that you're selling that you do want to sell properties because you want to pay some of this stuff off, but in a way you're not saying anything because you don't want to pay them off? Like, that's a massive responsibility that you have to this family,
Right.
and kind of a responsibility that you have to us to tell us. So
and this wasn't a typical money judgment where you can look at the judgment and it says this is how much money, because the deal was structured to so it was structured to sort of encompass all of his assets, and then as he sold off assets, there was a requirement to happen. So that's a little bit more complicated than, because like we see money judgments all the time, right, from people who've been sued, and we can usually tell on a basic money judgment like how much money is owed and who it's going to go to and all of those things. And so yeah, this sounds a lot more complicated than that, so it was a little bit of an anomaly.
Yeah, it wasn't, we didn't know. Yeah, we didn't know the end of it, kind of thing. I think at one point the family's attorneys found out that this is what he was trying to do. So immediately, they filed paperwork to make sure that they were compensated.
Right.
And at this point, title and the underwriters, in looking at all of the paperwork and the way how it was structured, we knew that we could not do anything with this property unless whatever profit that he was going to make, or even we were going to make, like, we're really not going to see anything because they're taking it all. And rightfully so. I mean, I would never wish anything like that to happen to anybody, especially a young woman. So when it comes to the point where, at this point, we're so disillusioned about the whole thing, but we're like, let's just sell it. Now we feel sorry for Jose. So we're going to go ahead and see what we can do for him. There was a day where, a couple of days a week, I would have to go show the property. And every time it was a fiasco. I had to go pick up Jose to make sure that he could kind of get everybody outside of the each unit, except for the one tenant that wouldn't get out of the first unit. It was always some sort of a circus. So one time, and you remember Dorian?
Yes.
From the office, and from the Saha office. So I asked Dorian, can you go with me? Because one, I don't feel like going all the way to the west side to pick up Jose. And two, I'm done dealing with Jose. I just want to get this over with. I want to show it, to this investor who might buy it. And to be honest, I think the girl that showed up right before the investor that was actually going to run numbers was Jenny first.
How small.
Yeah, now that I think about it.
Shout out to one of our wholesale colleagues. This happens on occasion, right?
I know, it's so funny because I was thinking about it earlier today and I thought, that girl looks really familiar, like in my memory. I'm like, who was that? And I'm like, I remember, I'm like, oh my God, it was Jenny. I think it was Jenny. And I got to call her. I got to ask her to see if that was, because I know she has a good relationship with John May. So we get there, Dorian and I, and it was, everyone was crawling, all of these, people that were high and like going back and forth and buying, you could blatantly, right? You see them buy drugs and you just grow so numb to it that you're just like, yeah, whatever. You just kind of walk in there.
Let's move along.
I don't know. I came from the school, like, even if you feel like, when you feel there's danger or like you don't belong, you just act like you belong and whatever, just kind of keep going. And I did. Myself and Dorian, we kind of snuck through the gate, under the gate that says keep out, and then I started kind of yelling at everybody, like, you need to get out, you need to leave. I need to sell this property is what I kept saying. You need to leave. I need to sell this property. And they're like, you're not the owner. For some reason, some guy from the drug house recognized me because I've been there so much that he came over and he's like, you got to listen to her. You got to listen to her. Everybody needs to get out. Everybody needs to leave. So I see all these people like packing up their bags. And I'm like, I'm like, you don't have to take your stuff. I'm like, I just need you to leave for like an hour, and then you come back. I'm like, you're gonna do your drugs, do them over there. Just don't be like not right here. So we're walking, and at one point, this man is like kind of like charging us, and Dorian's like, should I pick up a like he's trying to like figure out if he can pick up something like a wrench or something to like defend ourselves in case we get attacked. The whole thing was insane. So right before we cleared it out, and right before the person was supposed to show up, the investor, Jenny was already there. She was kind of walking and talking on the phone. A rooster like starts singing, I guess. I don't know, what do you call it? Cock-a-doodle-doodling. It's like super loud. And I'm thinking, what? Where is that coming from? So some dude, I think from the drug house, is like, there's a rooster that lives under the house.
Oh my God.
And I'm like standing there thinking, well, I can't get that out. Like, I don't know what to do. And I thought, well, you know what? Who cares? Investors have seen properties in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Not a big deal. So investor comes through, and of course he's like, where's that rooster coming from? I'm like, from the bottom floor of this particular unit. So we go through the whole thing. He's like, it needs a lot of, and I'm like, I know it needs a lot of work. At this point, we're open, think creatively. What could we do? So he has to get back to somebody else, obviously. And in the very first front unit, that lady would not, because that was the unit that was in best shape, I guess.
Uh-huh.
She would not get out. She would not leave the property, even though she was not supposed to be there. It created this humongous, it was just crazy from the get-go. Finally, Jose gets there. We've come to terms that we are going to go ahead and sell to them. At this point, Jose is not making any kind of money. We have to figure out how to give him something. And I think out of the whole thing, I think we only made like $1,500 for weeks and weeks of work. And this ridiculous circus that we went through, I think it was like $1,500.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you did find an investor that was
Yes.
interested.
And they did a really nice job, by the way. Looks great.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
so the at some point, either you guys or the new owner managed to get the squatters out.
yes, I think it took a while, to be honest, from what we saw. And because sometimes you drive back to the properties to see what they've done, if an investor has bought it. And it took a few months, I think, before they actually started to work on it. I think a lot of it had to do with the house next door. I personally was more interested in the house next door, but I think the owner from that home didn't want to sell. Didn't want to have anything to do with anything. So, because I remember we had approached that particular house too. Sunny Slope is an up and coming area, and we knew that back then, right? And we know that it still is. So when you see the drug house next to it, I feel like you can either try to clean that up, try to take ownership of it, and I think that's what this particular investor did. He just kind of waited around to see how things panned out, and then started work on it. And it looks good. It's a nice place. It's still a iffy area, but the place itself is really nice.
Nice.
Yeah, but never again.
Despite it being not the best deal that you've ever done, at the end of the day, it still worked out for the neighborhood. So there is some silver lining.
Yes, that the neighborhood. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest, what gets me, and that's one of the biggest things for me, is the wasting time thing.
Yeah.
It irritates me, especially when I know we're not really gonna, we had with Jose, we've come to him to hopefully do something, and he's not gonna see anything, nothing, and to break those news to him, because again, Spanish speaking, sometimes I feel they don't understand some of the legal things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think until I told him you will never be able to sell anything until you pay this debt to them.
Right.
So, like, I think that's when he finally understood, like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I can't do anything. I'm like, no, which was really sad.
Not quite as sad as running someone over, but sad.
Oh, that's true. I forget the whole thing. Yeah, he did run somebody over and left.
I remember when I heard that. I remember when you guys finally figured out all the legal stuff that was
Mhm.
going on. And I was like, he did what? Like,
Yeah.
because we've had a lot of crazy deals and we've worked with a lot of sellers in different types of distress. And this was the first time, this was the first time that I'd heard that someone um, ran somebody over in a crosswalk and was sued for millions
Mhm.
of dollars.
And
Yeah.
left the scene. I'm
And
like,
left
how
the
do you?
scene of the crime.
I just don't. Yeah, I don't know. Like, how do you live? Like, I don't know. I mean, he obviously went to prison and all that. I know he did his time. Absolutely,
Right.
but yeah, and to come to terms with that, yes, whatever you do or however you handle your financials, it really is impacted by this past, um,
Yeah.
you know, instance. Yeah.
So there were a number of red flags here,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And I think especially, so I feel like this changes over time because like when I feel like when you're new, and when I say new, I mean the first couple of years. I don't mean new the first couple months, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to do several deals and experience several different things before I think you start understanding what to look for in a deal that's going to go south.
Right.
Right.
Yes. You try to prep yourself
Yeah.
because when you see a red flag now, you're like, oh, okay, I should probably do this before
Right.
we get to this spot. Yeah.
And our job is essentially to be problem solvers. So it's not that we don't expect red flags, right?
Right.
Because we're supposed to be solving the problems that other people haven't figured out how to solve or that the seller can't figure out how to solve or whatever. So I feel like that muddies the waters a little bit when you're looking
Mhm.
at potential, red flags or potentially potential bad deals, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this deal, we had, squatters in the property, which isn't something that's necessarily unusual in a vacant property. So
Right.
that's something that we know some different ways to solve. But we had a distressed seller who, upon first meeting, was really drunk.
Yes. Um,
And so
yeah.
I think we've been able to put together that you get an idea pretty early on of what kind of behavior to expect throughout the duration of the deal. So
Mhm.
difficult seller who was, hard to get a hold of, was not sober, all of these things. So that's, then we've got a complicated lawsuit that
Mhm.
is overshadowing the entire deal. Yeah, so that's kind of a lot. That's a lot of things to assess whether or not you can effectively, I think, overcome them.
Yeah. And now when you see these things now, and it's been a couple of years, but when you see these things now, you're more apt to, talk about them or ask maybe the right questions in the beginning
Yeah,
also, because I think in the beginning we're so excited. We're like, "Oh my God, they want to show me the property and this is going to be great." Where you should probably have some kind of qualifying questions in the
yeah,
beginning to see if, because you don't want to waste your time, right? Like, that's
right.
the biggest thing. Yeah.
And that's important too, right? So I think that's something that we need to cover is especially when you're new, and because when you're doing what we do, there nothing is ever guaranteed, right?
Mhm.
So it feels like it can be hard to walk away from a deal,
Yeah.
right? Because you're going, well, look, I need this deal to work out because I don't know when I'm going to get the next deal, or I especially in the beginning, like paychecks are not predictable at the beginning
No,
of this business,
at
right?
all. Yeah, no, you don't know.
Right, you just don't know. So I feel like that is something that influences us, that we should share with people who are newer to the business, is, you know, try not to let that influence you, as difficult as it is, because wasting the time on a deal that you're not going to make any money on is not any, like, you're not setting yourself up at that point for success in terms of getting a payday. What you're doing is you're throwing out that time when you could be working on a different deal
Yeah.
that is actually going to work out.
Mm-hmm. And it's
And,
going to work out, and that it's going to work out for both parties, right? That's
yeah,
that's what you want. You want a win-win for everybody, not just you.
yeah,
You know, there's a lot of people that are involved. So yeah, it was just, oh my God, I was just so glad when it was over and done with. And I have to say, like, I was so surprised that somebody actually did buy it. But there's always somebody, right? There's always a property for somebody, no matter what. Like,
yes.
somebody will get that property. Even if you think, like, who would ever even think of buying that property? That person bought that property. So, but
There is always
yeah,
someone. Yeah.
thank God for that. Yep. Yeah. So that was probably the first ugly bad deal that I had.
Yeah, that's fairly ugly.
God.
Ah,
How
so
about you? I know
my
you have some fun ones.
my really bad deal, oh God, this one was ugly as well, and also had a lot of red flags. So this one was, I was actually working with Saha Group at the time as well, but someone else outside of the group that I was working with brought this deal. And so this is a deal that Daniel and I did together. And some of you know Daniel, he's my significant other. So both Angie and I, our significant others, work with us in business as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so so we were fairly new still at this point. I think we were about a year, maybe a year and a half in. And we had gotten some good momentum, and we'd done a bunch of wholesale deals. So at this point, you know, we thought we knew something, and we were wrong. And so this guy, who is also a wholesaler, brings us a deal and says, look, I have this deal under contract and I can't move it. I need to find a buyer, and it's a commercial property, and that's why I can't move it, because everything else that I've done has been residential. And so we said, okay, well, you know, we have kind of a large network of people. Maybe we can help. We'll take a look at things and see what we can do. And, you know, first of all, what I ended up finding out later on down the line was that this wholesaler was particularly slick, because who he was working with, we found out later that he was working with someone where he had many more resources than we understood that he actually did have. And there were ulterior motives for him wanting to pass this along to someone else. So I didn't realize that in the beginning.
Oh God.
And this wholesaler was a young guy. So we're thinking, oh, we're helping him out. He's new and he's young, and we're helping him out. So we go look at the property, and a colleague of ours came and actually helped us to assess it, because we'd never done a commercial deal. But what we did have was a really big buyers list and a lot of different people that we could network with to see if someone was interested in this type of property. So it was this little rundown strip mall in Mesa. And I actually have a couple pictures of it here that I can show you guys. So this is one part of the strip mall. It's kind of like an L shape. And so it had, I think, 6 or 7 storefronts. And then it also had a convenience store in front. And so this here,
I remember this. Yep.
Convenience store. And so as you can see, this is not a pretty, this is not a pretty strip mall. It's old. It's in kind of like a C part of town, if you're going to rate it A, B, C. It's in a C part of town, but it's on a really busy street. And you can see that, there's cars parked here and there are people here. So we said, all right, we think we can potentially do something with this.
Mhm.
So we have a colleague go and he helps us run some numbers, and he looks at a few things and he says, yeah, this looks like it could be a pretty good deal. And he even helped us figure out what our assignment fee could, possibly be. And so we figured 25,000 for an assignment fee, which, especially on a commercial deal, is not like a huge assignment fee. And so we put everything together. We find an interested buyer, and we start gathering the information, because since we're in the middle and we have to assign this to this buyer, we start gathering the information, or attempting to gather the information that the end buyer is asking us for. So he says, I like everything about this deal. Now what I need from you I need the leases for all the different businesses in the strip mall. I need the rent rolls. I need the financials. I need, any kind of utilities, insurance. So what we found out that we didn't know was this is common for a commercial deal, right? Because part of running the numbers is understanding if the businesses that are in the commercial property are doing well or if they're failing.
Yeah.
How long those leases are and things like that, because whoever's purchasing it needs to make sure, that kind of thing. If you're buying a strip mall, you're buying it for cash flow.
Yeah,
So you need to understand the numbers to see if the thing is going to cash flow. So that's when we started finding out that there were some inherent problems going on here. So the person who ran the convenience store was the owner of the entire strip mall that was in foreclosure. So he's running a business, and he's paying himself because the business is open and it's operating, but he's in foreclosure. So he's not paying his monthly payment for ownership of the strip mall. And we're going, okay, that seems odd. We need more information. At first he refused to give us any rent rolls. He refused to give us any information. And I'm going,
yeah, oh, wow. Yeah.
There's no way for us to actually do this deal if you're not going to give us this information. So that was I think we lost about a week and a half to 2 weeks arguing with him about whether or not he would provide us that information. So we have the time wasting happening, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So finally, he gets it into his head that the only way he's going to get out of foreclosure is to sell this property, and the only way he's going to sell the property is if he gives up, all of his financial information. And so then we find out that this guy doesn't know how to do the books. So he's got almost no information in terms of rent rolls. He doesn't have a P&L for his business. He has no idea what he actually makes and spends every month. He doesn't have a payroll. So
oh my God.
He's running this business totally flying by the seat of his pants, and he's not actually keeping books on anything. So we collect what we can, and what we find when we collect is that, first of all, he has written himself a 10-year ironclad lease that he cannot be evicted from.
Oh.
And we're going, well, this is a problem because you're not keeping your books appropriately.
Right.
And the new buyer is going, well, look, I don't know if I'm going to continue to honor this lease, because if you don't know how to run your books and you're going to be problematic paying your lease on time, because remember, this guy owns the entire strip mall. So he's obviously not paying rent in his spot because he's not paying the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's a huge red flag to the end buyer, because he's going, yeah, you're not going to pay rent because I don't even know like what your books are doing or how much money you're bringing in.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've written yourself a lease where you don't pay a monthly payment. Like, I'm sorry, no. That's
no.
not gonna work.
And if he's already done all of this, then he's going to continue to run like this.
Exactly. Yeah. So then we have to go renegotiate this lease. And then another couple of weeks go by arguing with him about that. Then we come to find out that like I said, I think there were 6 to 7 storefronts. We found out that he's using one of the storefronts as a storage facility for his own personal use, like things that should be in his house, in his garage. He's using, and so then our buyer comes back and says, you have to clear your crap out of here because in order for us to cash flow, we have to have a shop owner move in to that space. And I have to be able to assess what work needs to be done to it so someone can move into it, because I don't even know what it looks like because it's full. It's like a storage unit where it's just completely full of boxes all the way to the front door. And so there's no way to tell what condition the space is in.
Oh my God.
So this is just this nightmare of back and forth with this guy. And finally we get to a point where, you know, he relents. He's been difficult this entire time. And he finally says, okay, I'm willing to do all of the things that your buyer wants done one way or another. Some things we had to negotiate some steps in between, you know, because there were things that he wasn't willing to do immediately. But we got to the point where he was in agreement and our end buyer was in agreement with how it was going to work out, and the buyer is ready to close. And remember, this is a foreclosure, so we've got time sensitivity here too. And this is like, we've already spent like probably 5 to 6 weeks now going around and around with these people. So we finally get to the point where we're ready to close, and now it's contract stuff that we have to handle. And so I draw up an assignment contract, and I submit it to the title company that has already opened escrow on behalf of the wholesaler who has it under contract. That's when we find out that this wholesaler works for someone in town who apparently is known for completely screwing people on deals. And this is why he uses this particular title company, because he has an escrow agent in his pocket that's willing to do whatever he wants to do because of the number of transactions that he runs per month through their agency.
Oh God, yeah.
And at this point, I hadn't come across anything like that before, so I didn't think anything of the fact that they'd already opened escrow, because when you or I contract something, we go open escrow, right? And usually our buyer is totally fine to go ahead and close through our title agency. So I'm not thinking anything of that, you know, in terms of it being a problem, until I go and say, well, I have to draw up an assignment contract, so I'm going to need the name of the LLC that the original contract is under. You can't have that information. I'm like, what do you mean I can't have that information?
Oh my God.
This is how a wholesale deal works. Like, how many wholesale deals have you done? You know, so I'm taking for granted thinking that the kid doesn't understand how wholesaling works.
I'm not going to give you, what? I want to get out of here.
So I'm like, well, I can't do an assignment unless you give me the information that I need for my contract. And this is when the big red flag was raised, because he said, well, why don't you just let the title agency do that and we'll send everything to you to sign? And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Wait just a minute here. Something doesn't sound right. And so when that happened, I actually went and consulted our mentor and partner, John. And I was like, John, this seems a little odd to me. And he was like, absolutely, it's odd. That shouldn't be what's going on. We need to figure out what's going on here. So he says, what title company is it and who's the title agent? And I tell him, and he says, heard some things about that title company. I don't know. So he said, well, why don't we do a little bit of research? So our office gal who took care of researching other properties for us did a little bit of research and dug up who had it under contract. And she said, well, I have some news about the person who originally has this under contract. I don't know if you want to continue with this deal. You know, this is somebody who's known about town for causing problems and for screwing people on deals. So I don't know how this is going to go. It's a gigantic red flag that he's refusing to allow you to write up your own assignment contract to submit to the title company, and that he's not allowing you to see what LLC he's running this through.
Yeah, that's not right at all.
So it was at that point in time that I should have said, you know what, I'm not going to go through with this. This is ridiculous. And the only reason that I didn't was because my end buyer had done so much work at this point, And he is now like, I am ready to close and I want this deal. What is going on? So, the way that I learned to operate, thank you, John, is to just be upfront and tell people what's going on, because it's the easiest way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So I go to my end buyer and I say, look, here's the situation. This is what's going on. I'm not able to get the contracts completed, for these reasons. And this company that I was actually assigning it to, I have to give them a shout out, because they were so stand up in this transaction. They knew immediately that something was amiss as well. And they said, you know what, we're not going to let you get screwed over in this. We've been around the block a few times ourselves. And so it was actually, it was a company called True Freedom Achievers that I was selling this property to. And they were, they had the opportunity. And I said, look, I'm really sorry for wasting your time. If you guys want to walk away from this, I understand completely. And they said, no, we want to try to continue with the transaction. We think that we can get this done. Okay, great. So we went around and around with the contracts. And finally, after using some choice words with the escrow agent that included things like this, what you're doing is illegal. And, you have to allow us to see underlying contracts, and the end buyer is allowed to be privy to that information.
Mm-hmm.
Finally coughed up the name of the LLC for me to put on my assignment fee, or excuse me, my assignment contract. And so we got everything put together, and we finally think that we're getting to the point where we can actually close on this. And the day before we are supposed to close, we get a call from the escrow agent, and she says, there's been a problem reported with the property, and we have a preliminary closing statement that we're going to need you to look at. And unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get an assignment fee. And I'm like, excuse me? What do you mean I'm not going to be able to get an assignment fee?
That makes no sense. That makes no sense.
Right. So again, they send me the final settlement statement, and I'm looking at it, and I don't have as much experience at this point looking at settlement statements, especially for a commercial property with all of the inspections and all the nonsense that goes on in order to close on something like a strip mall versus your regular old house. So I'm a little confused as to what I'm looking at. However, my end buyers are very experienced in this, and they took a look and they said, well, isn't it interesting that a plumbing company got called in to do an inspection and found some problems, and the problems just happened to be the exact same price to fix as the assignment fee. Coincidence, right? And then we look into the plumbing company. Hey, guess who owns the plumbing company?
I was gonna say, I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? You know what?
The original contract holder also owns the plumbing company, who is saying that they need $25,000 to fix a plumbing issue, and that because they're not willing to budge on price, that just happens to eat up my entire assignment fee. Totally, it's just a coincidence, you guys. And I'm like, no, this doesn't seem right. And so again, I have John look over the settlement statement, and John says, this is bullshit. And then my end user looks over the final settlement statement and says, this is illegal. And so all of the things, and we threaten to hire an attorney, and we go through the whole, argument back and forth. Meanwhile, we have never, mind you, been able to get into contact with the actual LLC owner that has this under contract. We have only been able to talk to his bird dog, who has been, working with us this entire time. And we're going around and around. And, Bird Dog says to me, you should just let this go without getting an assignment fee, because he's like, this guy, all he's going to do is, if you make waves, all he's going to do is come after your business. And I'm like, why? I can't compete with anything that he's doing. And he said, out of spite. Out of spite. And I said, well, I'm not going to walk away from doing all of this work with nothing. So y'all better figure something out here so that we walk away with something, because this is ridiculous and I'm not going to let it go. We did actually consult an attorney who came back and said, well, here's the thing. It's going to cost you more to fight it than what you're going
Yeah.
to receive if you fight it. So is it worthwhile? Because all you're going to do, so you're going to do it for all the moral and ethical reasons, right? But at the end of the day, you may end up spending money, you know, to get this worked out
To
versus
get it done. Yeah.
getting your money out of the deal that you were supposed to get. And that was the very first disheartening conversation that we had with an attorney in our career, not the last, but that was the first time
Yeah.
that an
I
attorney ever told us, you should just walk away because it's going to cost you more to fix this problem than it is. And so we went from thinking we were going to have this really great experience of selling our very first commercial property, and making a really nice, you know, assignment fee, that for us was a nice assignment fee because we were still new. And this was going to be, you know, a great addition to all of the other deals that we were doing. And as it turned out, we basically got screwed. We made $1,100.
Oh my God.
And that's my LLC. So there, our LLC. So between the two of us, so we had $1,100 to split for a good 2 months of work that we did. The escrow agent, because we had raised such a problem, would not dole out the checks until we signed a hold harmless for her company because she knew what she did was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did we make barely any money, but then they held our check hostage until we agreed to sign a hold
I
harmless.
remember this. I remember like you guys. Oh God. I remember hearing about it, and then I remember you guys struggling to get like your commission. Didn't you guys like have to wait a little bit like a little bit?
We had to wait a while. And then even they played games until the very end, because then we had to do the hold harmless. Then we turned in the hold harmless paperwork. Then they refused, because this, let me just tell you, this escrow agent, she was just petty as shit. So then she was like, I'm not going to send a runner to your office with checks. You're going to have to come to our office and pick them up. Then we go to the office to pick up the checks. And then we get the run around at the office trying to pick up the checks. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Of course.
It was just one thing after another, after another, after another. And at the end of this deal, when we started talking to other people about what was happening, other people who, you know, who've been in the wholesaling community for a while, they all knew who this guy was that originally had it under contract. Everybody knew who he was. Everybody said you should have run the other way. And I said, you know, what was the point? Like, if this guy's such a bigwig, how come he couldn't find himself an end user buyer?
Yeah.
Why did he need to use us in order to do that? And I got to tell you, I still don't know the answer to that.
Because he's lazy. He's lazy. He has other people doing the work for him. So if somebody cannot find it for him, if his bird dog couldn't do it, then, you know, somebody that's actually going to take the time to do it.
Right.
I think, because I know who you're talking about, and I feel like, and it's not, I mean, there's a few folks that are out there that are shady like this. But for the most part, I think it's just, like, it gets to a certain point where you're just kind of like I have better things to do, like somebody else can deal with that kind of thing attitude. I feel like that's what a lot of that is.
Well, he did make
That's
an extra $25K on the deal since he absorbed our assignment fee. Or actually, $23,900 since we made $1,100.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, to him, he's like, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, how can I screw it to where I will always end up making all the money, but I don't have to work so hard for it. You know what I mean? My minions can do the work, which is what it feels like. I feel like the title agent was the one, you know, kind of running things too, and you know, everybody, you know, it's just, it's sad. This makes me mad because I feel like we work so hard sometimes, so hard for like things like this to happen.
We worked very hard. And it was not worth it. I suppose at the end of the day, we still walked away with something. And I sure did get a lot of experience and learn a lot about red flags and what not to do and when to walk away from a deal. You know,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you know, a company the size of the company that I assigned this deal to, they can find other deals like that on a daily basis. They don't need, you know, they didn't need some newbie wholesaler to go find them a crappy, strip mall in Mesa, you know, to sell them. I mean, the numbers worked and it worked for their portfolio, but it's not like it would have killed their business had they passed on it.
True.
So, you know, for them, they were doing me a favor much more than I was doing them a favor by the time we got to the end of the deal. And I really did not want to let them down because I always want to do business with integrity. So
Yeah.
it was really important to me. But in hindsight, probably the better thing to do would have been, you know, because look, I could have said, you know what, just cut me out of the middle of it. If you guys still want this deal and you want to fight with the crooked escrow agent and you want to fight with the crooked investor who is, you know, who's got all the underlying contracts and that's worthwhile to you, I will just step out of it and get out of the way so that you guys can do business, because me being in the middle certainly didn't help anything. And, you know, I'm not going to complain about ever making a paycheck. I'm always grateful anytime I can make a paycheck, but I got to say that for the time and effort that we put into it, we could have been working on a different deal that could have given us a much better return. You know, it is what it is. But I learned a lot.
Yeah, you do learn.
Yeah.
And like we said, I think that's kind of like the how to deal with all this.
How to yeah, because we dealt with a lot. Both of us in those in those particular transactions, we dealt with a lot.
Mm-hmm. But it goes to show too. Like I think if that came through or like to me now, like if I saw something like that, I think I would just say like, yeah, no thanks, well, you know, see you later. Like I don't want to deal with it. To me, I think the harder, I think it's also like, and you and I have talked about this, is the vibe that you're giving out too. Like I don't want hard or confrontational kind of deals or things that are going to be messy like this anymore. Like, no, I'm all right. Like life's too short. The stress level that you have to like deal with, and like and also because I think we were brought up pretty much like you said that's what you were gonna do, so you're gonna do it. Like, and you told somebody your word is your word. So that's where and so we put ourselves through this. It's not good. It's not a good thing to do.
Yeah. So I would say anyone who's trying to learn the ropes, when you come across a deal where it's just one difficulty after another, there comes a point where I think you have to question, is it worthwhile going through with this? I definitely think that we're lucky in the with the fact that we've done really difficult deals and managed to come out on the other side profitable almost every time. Even if that profit was tiny,
right.
Because I have heard stories from other investors and other wholesalers where they got into a bad deal and felt like it was their responsibility to see it through, and they ended up having to come to the table with money. So keeping that in mind, you know, we got lucky that didn't happen with the deals that we're talking about today, but it's in the realm of possibility. So it's something that you should look at if you find yourself in a really difficult deal where there's a ton of resistance. And then like we were just saying, you know, Angie and I at this point have had many conversations about what kind of transactions we want to do in the future. And I think in the beginning, you learn a lot from doing complex, difficult transactions that maybe other people aren't willing to take on. And I think that that has given us a really good business foundation, because I think we have experience and we have knowledge that other people don't have because they passed on deals like that. However, if that's the only kind of deal that you do, you're just going to burn out
Yeah, absolutely. And it can happen really fast.
real fast.
Because you do, after a while, it's like, wow, am I only attracting like really difficult people? Like, am I a difficult person? You start to really question your own self and your sense of self. Like,
Yeah.
who am I? Because and sometimes when you're going through some of these really hard, but there's all these intricacies kind of happening, you know, and trying to maneuver through it, the variety of people and personalities and the paperwork, and you start to really think like, can I do this? Like, am I just totally like off base? Should I be looking at doing something else? Like, people, it runs you down big time.
Yeah. And it can hurt your confidence because
Absolutely.
there are so many moving parts to wholesale transactions and to like distressed real estate transactions that, you know, you think you're covering all your bases and something comes out of left field and blindsides you that you had no idea. And if that happens over and over again, you start thinking like, am I not appropriately qualifying these transactions before I'm taking them on? And then when you're juggling multiple transactions, if you're in escrow on 3 or 4 deals at one time, and all of them happen to be this level of complexity, you will pull your hair out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have both been in that situation where it's, you know, multiple difficult deals at one time, and that can be really tough to keep up with. So there's got to be a balance. On the one hand, there's a reason why other people pass on those deals, and you know, and so you have to qualify that too, right? Because maybe what's really complicated to somebody else, given our level of knowledge and expertise, it isn't that complicated. We know how to do it, so we can get it done. However, there are some of those deals that the reason that several people passed on them is because it's not worth it at the end.
No, it's not. And I think, you know, as things progress for anyone that's new, and even for some of the people that have been in the game for a while, sometimes you have to reassess, and you should reassess kind of how you're doing, the kind of business that's coming in. And I know sometimes you get into that scarcity mindset also when you're trying really, really hard to continue, you know, especially right now, right? Because with this whole thing happening, I don't like to give it a name because then you make it real kind of thing. But anyways, we all know it's there. And you start to really like question, like, how am I gonna, you know, next month, or especially if you are running your own business, or like me, I mean, I work for SawHub, but I also have the business side of things, and I know that you can't depend on anything. Obviously, like we're seeing what's happening.
Right.
So you start to really just take anything that comes at you. My suggestion is no, don't do that. Like, because some things are just, they're not worth it. It's better to spend time on something that you're actually going to get something out of.
Yeah.
And know where, it's like with anything, it's just prioritizing what matters to you.
Absolutely. And I've definitely seen a lot of new people also get into the habit of they've done a few transactions where it feels really good to help somebody in distress that didn't think there was an answer to their problems. And so they kind of get addicted to that whole, well, let me solve this really difficult problem that no one else can solve. And that's great, but there really are every once in a while some things that either are not solvable, or the amount that you have to do to get it solved is way beyond what you could possibly be compensated based on the actual transaction, right? And if that's the case, you're going to end up disappointing that seller that you're working with anyway. Because like Angie was saying earlier, you know, because her seller didn't disclose that there was this enormous lawsuit And maybe he didn't fully understand that he wasn't allowed to collect, any kind of profit on any assets that he sold until after his debt was paid in full. But if Angie would have been privy to that information from the very beginning and would have been able to make that assessment before everybody put a ton of work and effort into it, she could have had that conversation with the seller and said, look, you can't get anything out of this. All it's going to do is erase some of your debt. So it's now your call. If you want to take down that debt, and we can see if there's something that we can do, but we can't make any promises, versus when you don't have all the information and you're saying, this is what you can get from the transaction. And then you have to turn around and have the conversation later about how that's not going to work out. Sellers in that scenario, 9 times out of 10, they just want somebody to blame because they're angry, and you're going to be the person that they blame. It's not going to have anything to do with you and if you could solve the problem or not. In fact, in the case of Angie's deal, that was all the seller. That was all the seller. Don't drive drunk. You got yourself into that mess.
I know.
Angie can't fix it.
And I was just, and yes, it would have saved a ton for everybody involved. Like, everybody involved. I think at this point, it was one of those where, wow, we're like way deep in there, and we're going to have to kind of dig ourselves out of it now. And I know at one point that we did think maybe we should just walk away and let it go. But at the same time, again, because sometimes some of us tend to just, nobody gave me my word and I'm going to, that's what I wanted to do. So we gave it our all. And I mean, it was a little bit of a profit, but yeah, that was rough. And again, it's just, as you go, you start, learning and learning, and there's some amazing deals out there. Absolutely. But I think you do kind of get knocked around a little bit.
Yeah.
And every now and then, throughout as you go, there's some things kind of, oh, wow, like didn't see that one coming kind of thing.
So hopefully someone can learn from these transactions that we talked about today, and maybe that can help you guys assess a little bit clearer, how do you want to qualify transactions that you might be taking on. And when, I can definitely say, like, listen to your gut. If you feel like something's wrong, something's probably wrong. And if you feel like something's wrong, that's probably going to be a bigger problem to address later. So, address it now, deal with it now, see if you need to walk away. The earlier, the better. You're not required, nor are you obligated to actually take on every deal, because as new information comes to you, you are allowed to say, I didn't have this information before. This changes the terms of the deal, and here's why. So hopefully you guys can take that information and apply that in the future so that you don't get stuck like we did, working on something for 2 months that isn't worth your time and effort.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. Wow, yeah. So, and some things run years, but yeah, that's a whole other subject matter. What are we going to be talking about next time?
I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about next time. I would be open to suggestions, both from viewers and if you had anything in mind, Ange. Anything?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, I know there's a lot of subject matter that we can talk about. Well, let's see. Maybe we can do a little poll and see what people will want to hear about.
That would be, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be fun. All right, y'all. We're going to put out a poll. So please contribute to the poll and tell us what you're interested in hearing about. Because if you don't, we're just going to have to make something up. It will certainly entertain us, but I can't promise it'll entertain you if you don't tell us what you want.
I know, right? Yeah, I think, we'll see what comes up, but it is I think the more feedback that we get also is good. But we definitely have a lot of things that we can share for sure.
Yes.
We've had a
Yes.
few years now, so yeah.
So we'll post something up on our How to Deal page, and you guys can tell us what you think. So thank you for spending this time with us, everybody, and listening to our worst deals. I hope that information was helpful for
Yeah,
everyone, and I hope it was educational.
absolutely. And I don't think it was too scary. Like, nobody died. Yeah,
Right.
nobody died. Nobody died. So that's
Yeah.
good. So, and nobody got, yeah, I mean, because there's some crazy ones out there. Sometimes I do feel like we should have some sort of remember I told you we should have a bodyguard or some dude that kind of comes along with us and
Yeah.
does all the dirty work. Like, the bodyguard would have gone over to this person and said, you need to put your LLC down on the paperwork kind of thing,
Right.
It would be nice to have that person.
That
But,
would have been helpful.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think so. Sometimes you do need somebody like that behind, your pocket. But
Absolutely.
that's a story for another time, a conversation for another time in the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Well, have a great weekend. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday.
Thursday.
Not that work stops or anything. Everything just kind of keeps right on going through the weekend. So,
It sure
which is
does.
good.
It
Yes.
sure does. So
Which
yeah,
is
so we'll take the weekend to assess our poll, and we
Yep.
will be back Monday with a new episode for everyone. And so go ahead and tell us what you're interested in hearing about. We want to do this for you guys. Okay.
Yep. Great. All right. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, Ange. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you. Thanks, Lisa. Bye, guys.
Bye.